Let's crack open a beer and share some thoughts.
Welcome to Opinions, and we are back once again, but we're not alone this week, mate.
Oh no, how have we done this? How have we got someone else here?
We are joined by a guest drinker, Richard Taylor. Rich, welcome to Opinions.
Good afternoon, gentlemen.
And for those that don't know Rich, he is the, let's make sure we get his title right, he is the general manager.
That's correct.
Of the Victoria Inn in Colchester, a place that is very dear to both Martin and I's hearts.
Very nice to see you, Rich. Thanks for joining us.
And you guys?
So what have we all got in our glasses? Let's dive straight into what we're drinking this week. Martin, let's start off with you, mate.
Some beers that were sent to both of us over the last couple of weeks. Some came from Anspach and Hobday, 6% IPA, and I've seen some very good things about this so far.
Rich, what's in your glass?
I am currently drinking the Utopian British Pilsner. I had a few last night, and this is my favourite of the four I received. 4.4 crisp Pilsner. I've had it in the fridge all day, so it's lovely and cold.
What have you got, Steve?
I have got, again, I'm drinking some beers that have been sent to us. These were sent to us a while back now, just before we were told to stay at home. So, Martin, you haven't yet got your share of these beers. But these are from Broughton Owls in Scotland. And I am drinking a wee Jock, which is a 1980 shilling, 4.6% ABV, tiny version of a full-on Scotch ale, which I'll be getting onto later.
Well, I'm going to show both Richard and Steve the beer in my glass because it is actually looking rather nice.
Oh, lovely beer.
Crystal clear, lovely white foamy head, and I have to admit those initial fruit flavours I'm getting both on the nose, fruit aromas and the fruit flavours are definitely leaning towards the West Coast style. It's very well balanced, very well rounded, probably not quite as bitter as I might like it to be, but that's a personal preference. But it does come in at 6%, so perhaps you wouldn't expect it to be quite as bitter or as dry as maybe some of the higher alcohol versions of the IPA. And interestingly, it is just called the IPA. They haven't classed it as a West Coast IPA. Very, very easy to drink. It would be a dangerous 6%. I mean, what's dry Paul's 5.9? And I can definitely see similarities between this and Jaipur, if I'm being honest.
Nice.
And that can only be a good thing if I'm saying that.
In terms of this wee Jock, it's very toffee, malty kind of flavours going on in there. A little bit of an earthy, roasted finish going on. It's really quite light, but I think this version, the 4.6 version, is designed to be a little bit lighter. So, what else have we been drinking this past week? I know, Martin, both you and I are going to be discussing a couple of beers that we've both had this weekend because we've got some views on those.
What have you been drinking that's standing out for you, Rich?
Yeah, a few of the standouts. I've had some average beers this week, and I've had some rather good beers this week. Just a couple of standouts. Big Thor 2 from Lost and Grounded and Burnt Mill. I'm just trying to see what they class it as. It's an American IPA. Yeah, really crisp and resinous, 6.8%, but drinks so easily. One that I'm ashamed to say it was the first time I've ever had it was Steady Rolling Man from Daya. I've never had it before, and it's just a fantastic beer. I can see why it's so highly rated by everybody. And again, mentioned them earlier, the Utopian lagers that I drank last night. I did all four from the box last night. And coming from an ex-lager drinker, it sort of made me fall in love with lager again.
Okay, cool. I mean, I think me and Steve said it last week. It's probably not too much to add, but I think since we first tried them in March, I think it's been good. Steve, shall we dive into our...
Let's talk about these two beers, shall we? Because that's all we're going to talk about. So we both had the returning Jackhammer from Brewdog, and we both had the latest iteration of their Born to Die IPA, which I think is dated something like the 15th of May
Yeah.
Is it this one? So, and I know we've got slightly similar but slightly different views on the both of them. So, you want to start with Jackhammer?
Yeah. Obviously, so I did look back on Untapped to see when I last had it, and it was a good 18 months ago. And then I know that at the time when they said that it wasn't going to remain part of the core range, I think definitely from you and I, Steve, and a few others, there's wailing and gnashing of teeth, because it's definitely one of our, if not our favourite Brewdog beer.
It's also one of their better beers.
Of the beers that they used to brew regularly, and the beers that they've brewed a lot of, I would say it is there. Along with because I've got a lot of love for Dead Pony Club.
Yeah, you're a big fan of that, aren't you?
Yeah. I'd quite happily go from Dead Pony Club to Jackhammer and miss out Punk in the middle. I had a can of the Jackhammer on Friday evening. Halfway through it, I'd already decided I was going to have a second can. It was piney, it was resinous, such great aroma up front, lovely flavour. And I have to admit, it is actually one of the most bitter West Coast style IPAs I've had in a while. It is making me reevaluate my love for a couple of IPAs I've waxed lyrical about over the last year. One being Pondera, which I still love, and also the Magic Rock Vocation collaboration from last year that was in Tesco. I think Jackhammer, as I had it, is ahead of both of those for what I want from a West Coast IPA.
I don't disagree with anything you're saying there. I mean, flavour wise, it was absolutely stunning, and it was literally like revisiting an old friend. Although I do. It's been almost 2 years since I last had Jackhammer, so it's very difficult for me to say, oh, I remember exactly what that tasted like, because I've had a lot of beer in 2 years. But I do remember it being even more bitter than that, and I remember it being like almost mouth-dryingly bitter at the end of it. And because one of the things that I used to say about it was a ruthless IPA, and I just think that they've obviously made some tweaks to it. It's still a fantastic beer, but I don't think it was as good as the old Jackhammer.
I'm going to have to say that is the one point I think we do disagree on. For me, according to my memory, and again, that may be a bit of a loose memory, considering that you're talking about maybe smashing a few Jackhammers in the past. I think it's up there, but I think even maybe taking that slight disagreement, I'm pleased it's back, and I'm pleased it hasn't disappointed me.
Same here, 100%. And it's great that you can now get your hands on that in selected Morrisons as well. I've still not been able to find it. Yeah, I've not been able to find it.
Not in Mid or South Essex, as far as we can work out, Steve.
No. So, and then that brings us on to the other one. So, it's Born to Die, which a little bit higher ABV, about 8.5%, isn't it?
Yeah.
Born to Die. It seems to have become an annual release now, whereas they used to do it 2 or 3 times a year. I cracked open mine yesterday, straight after Jackhammer. Seemed to be the obvious way to go. And I found myself initially questioning, what's the ABV on this? Because it was ridiculously easy to drink. There was almost no bitterness profile to it whatsoever. It was really, really balanced. It had lots of piney and resinous flavours that you'd expect from, I think they call it a terminally hopped IPA. But it was too easy to drink. And I don't know whether that was a consequence of doing it after the Jackhammer, but I would have expected it to have been an equal challenge to the Jackhammer.
I agree. I did exactly the same thing. Again, Friday, had my 2 cans of Jackhammer, and then I did do 2 cans of Born to Die. As you can tell, Friday was obviously a good night. It was just, I've written down how much I enjoyed it, but on Untapped, I've written down, is it too well-rounded? Yeah. There's simply no harsh edges. And I think for a lot of people, it will appeal even more to them because, Jackhammer, I think because it's got a little bit of harshness to it and has got the dry, bitter finish, sort of flags up a little bit that maybe you're drinking a bigger beer. I mean, Born to Die tastes like it's a couple of % lower than Jackhammer.
Yeah, it was just, like I say, very easy to drink.
Which I suppose, if I'm being, let's be fair to Brewdog, if that's what they're aiming for, then I think they've nailed it. But my recollection of my favourite Born to Dies was that there was a point when I'm supping that beer. Maybe it was when I was having the 660 bottles, but there came a point where I felt, oh, this has got something about it. This is a little bit not tough, but it lets me know it's a big ABV beer.
Yeah, and I agree totally.
And it wasn't doing that so much, but it is superbly well rounded, drinks really easily, and I think if you haven't tried it and you do like the West Coast flavours and aroma, but without the harshness, I think you'll love Born to Die 1505 2020.
Yeah, and I believe it's still available, I think, on the Brewdog website. I mean, it's one of those where there are limited quantities of it, because it is kind of a seasonal special release that they do, but well worth getting your hands on some if you're looking to do an order. Yeah,
and it's come in a sensible size, the 330.
Yes,
for an 8.5% beer as well.
Yeah, and I did find that quite strange with the whole Jackhammer's back, but it's in a 440, because Jackhammer used to be 330 cans, and it was eminently crushable when it was in a 330ml can.
Well, yeah, but let's be honest, it should be in a 330.
It should.
Dead Pony Club should be in 440. Jackhammer should be in a 330.
Okay, so Rich, it's great that you've joined us as our guest drinker this week, and obviously, as we said in the introduction, you are the general manager of our spiritual home, the Vic Inn in Colchester. But obviously, at the moment, that's closed, and
yes.
you're furloughed. How's that working out for you, mate? And what for you and for the pub as a business as well?
Yeah, it's all a bit of a strange scenario to be in. Obviously, we were informed by the government to close the pub. So, obviously, since then, the pub has been completely closed down. We've received, luckily, we've received this government grant that they're giving to all the local borough councils to then give out to specific businesses. So that's good. That'll keep us going. We've looked at a few bits and pieces, and if we start opening around September time, for us it's going to be business as usual. I think we'll be one of the lucky ones. We're doing all right. I'm keeping in contact with a few customers as and when, making sure they're all right. I've spoke to the staff fairly frequently. The latest is the good news story, because it's payday tomorrow. So by the looks of it, we've got all of our applications through to the HMRC. We seem to be sorted, and payday tomorrow, so there'll be more beer orders going in. But again, as for the pub,
I like your priorities there, Rich.
Oh, of course. Yeah. It's definitely on the list of things to buy. Yeah, but I mean, as for the pub, like I say, it's taken every day as it comes. We're keeping an eye on government daily briefs to see if there's any clue of when they want to open the pubs up again. But I think the general consensus across the industry is that we're going to be the last, or one of the last industries to open. They're talking about maybe doing a soft opening and limiting the number of customers, still maintaining your social distancing, and as you guys know, in the Vic, to try and keep customers 2 meters apart from each other, we'll probably have about 8 customers. It's quite a small pub with lots of sort of bottlenecks, and the toilets are small, etc. And then, from if that happens, it's are the breweries in the position to brew the beer for us so that we can open fully, or do we just open as a keg pub to start off with? Because as I've discussed with some people, breweries are going to need at least 10 days to get beer brewed, racked and conditioned, and then out to the pub. Then obviously we need to condition it and get it ready to sail. So it's an unknown. Unfortunately, it's an unknown scenario. But we're ticking along. We're all trying to stay positive. Myself, I've been keeping busy, watching lots of films, gardening, doing my daily walks, etc. Was supposed to be getting married today, so if I couldn't spend,
you're spending it with Steve and I instead of getting married to your beloved.
Yes, if I couldn't get married today, second best option was to sit and drink beer with you guys. But yeah, the pub's going to still be there. I'm looking forward to it reopening, and I'm dreading it opening because everybody's going to want to go to the pub. As soon as we open, the pub is just going to be full of people that have been, waiting to get to the pub. The love we're getting on social media is crazy. You sometimes you take it for granted that you see these people day in and day out, and they're just your customers and you're serving them beer. But in a sort of crisis like this, all the messages of support we're getting, and we've got one regular customer that once a week he walks up to the pub and has a little sob and sends us a picture of it, and you miss people that you see every day. It's a really strange scenario. I think once this is all done, pubs will come back bigger and better, and hopefully we'll all have learned that we need to be a bit more tolerant with each other and love each other a bit more like we're doing at the moment.
But I mean, I have to admit, from my own personal point of view, it's good to hear that you feel that the Vic is going to be able to weather this particular storm. Well, we've been chatting for a little while. So, Steve, how's your Broughton small Scotch ale?
It was okay. I've got to admit, I struggled to drink it. I did have a few beers last night, and the last thing that I felt like drinking this afternoon as my first beer of the day was a wee heavy. I've got to admit, but it's malty. There's lots of caramel. There's toffee in there. It's exactly what you expect from the style of beer. It's on point. Yeah, I'm going to be moving on to the Scotch ale now, the 6.7% older brother of the wee Jock.
Well, I have to admit like I said, I think I probably did luck out on this particular organisation we did for this show. The IPA I finished about a good 10 minutes ago. So easy to drink, really well rounded. Still, like I said, got all of those West Coast flavours and aroma, but doesn't have that bitter finish. But it's got quite a dry finish, just not quite the bitter harshness.
And Rich, how are you getting on with your Utopians? You've moved on to another one? I think I noticed you pouring.
Yeah, that Pilsner didn't last too long at all. I've moved on to the Utopian Premium British Lager. So another great lager, 4.7%. I mean, I don't need to say anything else about it. It's just a great lager, and I can certainly see myself drinking plenty of these, especially in the sunnier climates. We've got lovely weather at the moment, and this goes down a treat.
Okay, well, while we're enjoying these, let's get into this week's question.
Hopinions, 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 Hopinions.
So this one wasn't a poll. This was on the back of a couple of discussions that we had on previous shows, and a couple of discussions we found ourselves involved in on Twitter, which was about blending beers. And we simply asked people, which two beers would you choose to blend and why? Now, I know, Martin, you and I have limited experience of blending our own beers. Rich, you did feedback on this particular question at the time, something along the lines of the classic light and bitter. Is that something that is still frequently requested in pubs these days?
Ooh. In a certain circle of customers, yeah, we do have a regular group that come in of a certain age and tradition that will have a few pints of mix, whether it will be a brown ale and a stout, or they're not much into their hoppy beers, so they kind of sway from those, but they do like obviously our house brown beer is the Ambassador, so they do like to mix that with whatever we've got on our dark pump at the time.
This was one of the things that actually brought the conversation up, wasn't it? Because I was there when the fella asked for half of 5 Points Railway Porter and half of Ambassador brown ale, and I stood there and almost shuddered at the thought of that.
Yeah, that's right. It's an odd concept, but ale drinkers, they like, they like these things. And if from my experience with something like the 5 Points Railway Porter, if they're not too keen on the sort of the smokier flavours or that the roasted malts, they like to soften it with a brown ale.
Well, they're just wrong.
Martin, your face there was just the look
sorry,
of absolute horror.
I can't cope with this conversation any longer.
That's it. It's over already.
Well, shall we have a look and see what some of these other suggestions were on this one? So, from Carl M at Marshall Isle Cole, port and impy stout, 2/3 impy and 1/3 port.
I tell you what, that's going to have you singing, isn't it?
And it just, yeah. I mean, he's not messing about there.
No, your port's coming at what, 19 to 22%. Your impy stout, let's be honest, we all generally say impy stout is 10% plus. That's a good end of evening, unless he means that at the start of the evening, just to kick off the party.
Oh, I'm guessing that's got to be an end of evening, isn't it?
That's an end of night beer, that is.
So the next one, and Martin, I believe you tried this before we started recording today. So this was from Sean O'Reilly at Uncrulia. I often blend Ghost Ship and Ghost Ship 0.5, so I can have 3 pints and still be under the limit. Now you tried it, didn't you?
Yeah. Well, I'll be honest. When I first read this comment from Sean, because this poll was a few months old now, I almost cried that he was putting the 0.5 into Ghost Ship. And I'm presuming this is when he's at the local. So Ghost Ship on cask. He's putting Ghost Ship 0.5 in there. But we'll go. I'm going to try and get past that. But I did actually have a can of Ghost Ship and can of Ghost Ship 0.5 in the fridge. So I thought, as a pre-recording freshener, I'd see what it's like, and it was actually quite tasty. The citrus notes which you get from Ghost Ship was somewhat more muted because of I think the Ghost Ship 0.5 is slightly more bitter, but the two did work. How they'd be with like the cask or tap versions, I don't know, but I thought I would try it, and I'm not saying I'm going to do it very often, but it wasn't a disaster. Let's put it that way.
Okay, well that's a good thing, at least then, isn't it? From Martin Griffin at Martin the Monkey, Sarah Hughes, Ruby Mild and Orval.
I can't. Well, first of all, I can't picture a place where you'd get both those beers, if I'm being honest.
True. I don't think the former's available in bottles either, is it?
That I don't know. I mean, Orval I've only ever seen in bottles. And Sarah Hughes, Ruby Mild, I know is a much loved classic cask mild, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I don't know, but I suppose there maybe is a place that has it, or maybe you can get the Ruby Mild on bottle, but I can't imagine what would have thought process went into those two, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, well, we had quite a few on along the lines of Orval, and there's apparently quite a popular blog post that Boke and Bailey did, where they blended Orval with Proper Job and called it Prop Orval, and apparently it's absolutely fantastic. We'll put a link in the show notes to that particular piece.
Okay,
so
I must have missed that one.
People can read about it, but
I mean,
yeah.
I'm a big fan of both beers. I mean, I love a Proper Job and I do love Orval. Before I dive into the next comment, because it's in the right place now, I have cracked open my second beer. So I've got the Anspach and Hobday, the Porter at 6.7%. It is black as you like. No, you can't see through this. Slightly creamier cream-coloured foam head. And as soon as I opened the can, there was those slightly smoky, chocolatey notes. So I'm actually really excited to get into this.
I've got the Old Jock, the Scotch House. This is 6.7% again from Broughton. This is more up my street. It's thicker. It's the body is fuller. Again, lots of toffee malted notes, some caramel biscuit in there, and just a really smooth, soft, creamy earthiness on the finish. This one's working much more than the Wee Jock did for me.
That's brilliant. I've just drank some of the porter. it tastes as good as it smells. That slightly roasty, smoky notes. I think because they've just called it the porter, and a lot of the stuff at Anspach and Hobday do with some of these beers are very much trying to look back as well. And porter been very much a London heritage beer, I suppose. That is tasting absolutely brilliant, and there's a slight thickness to the body as well. Which sort of brings me into the next couple of comments. So from Riverman Brews, a creek and a big chocolatey stout.
I can see that working.
Well, I suppose that sort of lends itself to the Guinness and Timmermans collaboration that they did.
Yes.
Very similar. Maybe not quite so much chocolate notes on a Guinness, but I can now that I've read that, I can see that completely.
Which I believe somebody will actually reference that, didn't they? So Simon at Barley Wine is Life actually mentioned the Guinness and Timmermans Creek. But obviously that's something that has come pre-blended. So that's the work's been done for you. Whereas I guess what we're talking about here is more you taking two beers and going, right, well, will these work if I put them in the same glass?
Yeah. Although we did start off with the first comment with a port and a stout. So I suppose it's all up for grabs, as they say.
It would seem so.
From Miles Lambert, Cloudwater, make apple pie great again, and custard porter.
See that working?
You can definitely see that working, can't you?
Well, the concept would work. I pretty sure I tried the custard porter. I mean, that's a couple of years old now from Cloudwater. Never tried the make apple pie great again, but can see where he's going with those two.
Yeah. And again, giving another shout out for Orville. Aged Orville, 3 years, and fresh Orville. I've done this before, and it was sensational. Best of both. So I suppose that's similar to blending when they used to blend the old porters and Guinness and stuff like that, isn't it?
Yes. So you take a beer that's aged, you blend it with a bit of the new stuff, and what you get actually is a completely different beer. And
that's what they do with lambics. I mean, often a lot of lambics are 1, 2, and 3 years blended by the time you're drinking them in the bottle. So I can see that. And then one final one, which I think is just, again, one that I really wouldn't have thought of. And this is from Ruth Mitchell at Beer Fairy. Adnams Bitter and Broadside. For me, it's pretty normal in Suffolk. The broadside brings the sweetness and richness, while the bitter keeps it clean, lower ABV, and adds swiggability. Ordered as a B&B.
Interesting.
I mean, I've had both of those beers. I'm sure both of you have had both of those beers at varying times, bearing in mind where we live in the country. Yeah. I wouldn't have pictured it immediately, but I can sort of see that working.
I can see it working. I would never have thought of doing that, but now it's the only thing I want to do.
So the only thing you want to try is a pint of beer that consists of half a cask of bitter and half a cask of broadside bitter, and that's the one thing you can't do.
Exactly, yeah. I know. Typical me, isn't it? What about from your point of view? Have you any experience of blending your own beers at home? Have you ever tried anything? Have you ever looked and gone, oh, they'll work?
No, but I have. I've been racking my brains. I'm not even sure I've done the whole dark and light with the old
the black and tan.
Yeah. But the one time I did have a blended beer was about a year ago when me and Michelle went to Scarborough, and on the train between Scarborough and Huddersfield, where we were going to go meet up with the one and only Mr. Johnson, we were sharing the train with Stuart. From North Riding, because he was on his way to Hop City at the time, and he had a couple of cans of Northern Monk beers. One was called Death and one was called Glory, and this was at 10:30 in the morning. And then he got some plastic cups out and he did proceed to blend them. So I was having a blended Death and Glory at 10:30 on a Saturday morning.
Nicely done.
Yeah. How to start off the day. I didn't actually have a bigger beer the whole day than those two beers.
Yeah.
And I have to admit, I did enjoy it. And I've had both of those beers separately as well. I don't know whether it enhanced or detracted from the experience, but I do know that I did enjoy it. It's just something which doesn't occur to me, I have to admit. And I think I've said that before. And I think when I used to be a Beer Bod subscriber, every now and again they would have some options if you wanted to blend. But I've always been of that opinion, and rightly or wrongly, if someone else blends it for me and it comes out in a can or bottle, I'll try it rather than me doing it myself. And like I said, I'm not making any judgments about it, but it's just something I don't think about doing.
What about yourself, Rich? Is it something you've ever done other than serving people in the pub that request it? Have you ever got 2 beers and gone, oh, you know what? I think I'm gonna put them in the same glass.
Not unintentionally, no. Tiny Rebel, their birthday beers this year were designed to be blended, so they were all decent beers on their own, but they actually paired up. There was 8 beers released for their birthday, and they were coupled up. So there was a lemon sour and a key lime pie, which blended together was meant to work, and there was 2 New England IPAs that you could blend together. We did the event at the Vig, so obviously for work purposes, I had to try all the beers and blend them together and see if they worked. Yeah, they changed the beer. I can't say it sort of blew me away, but it still worked. I think I replied to this poll. I'd just love to have a proper light and bitter. A Young's light ale mixed with a proper pint of the Tetleys, the old school Tetleys.
Actually, how did you describe it, actually, Richard? I think you were a little bit more colourful in your language when you shared that comment with us. I'd have to go for the old classic light and bitter. So a Young's light ale mixed with a proper old school pint of Tetleys, in brackets, not that crap they brew now, close brackets, and poured properly. And you're very specific as well. 2/3 bitter and a bottle mixed in 1/3. So is that the prescribed amount?
No, it's an unwritten rule when you are ordering a mix in a pub, is that you don't give half and half. You pour the first. So if it was, let's say, Tetleys on cask, you pour what we call a working man's half, just over the half pint. If you pour it at half a pint, you'll get stick for life. So it's a generous half and a bottle of light ale, so that you can use the bottle of light ale at least twice. None of this half measures.
If someone ordered that, what do you charge them? Do you charge them for a half?
Charge them for a half and the price of the bottle of light ale.
In that case, they've done quite well out of that deal, haven't they?
Yeah. Oh, it's if you were ever to go into like a proper old school working man's club or pub, and you went in and asked for a light and bitter, and the bar staff poured you exactly half and popped a bottle of light ale next to it, chances are they probably wouldn't move from the bar until you topped it up.
Okay, that's interesting. So there's definitely a financial consideration in that particular option as well then. So it's a bit like having a baker's dozen.
It keeps the customers happy.
Cool. And we like that. Steve, next time we go there to the Vic, I'm just going to order
a light and bitter.
Light and bitter.
Yeah.
All day long.
Every time Rich comes to serve me, I'll have one of those really big halves, please.
Yeah, that's it.
And can you top it up with something else?
That's fascinating. That really is. That's a great insight as well. And that's an insight that we wouldn't have got if you weren't with us today, Rich. But we do encourage our listeners to keep this discussion going. Use the hashtag Hopinions, and you may very well find yourself in this next part of the show.
Let us know. Write it down. Let us know. Write it down. Let us know your thoughts in bitter and lingerness. Write it down.
The discussion about corkage has continued into bitter and lingerness this week, which we thought it might do, because I don't think you were particularly clear with your views on this one last week, mate. I think you were, sat on the fence a little bit. And
I was too wishy-washy, wasn't I?
Yeah. So we've got quite a bit of feedback here. So first up from Jules Gray at Beer Revere. Now, Jules is the owner of the Hop Hideout in Sheffield. So she said, you've probably already discussed all of this, but I don't see any indie businesses making huge sums of money. People are being reasonable and charging fairly for services. Also, some have to operate GP's percentage and not a set amount to cover running costs and make a living. Often that pound is then reinvested for the benefit of customers and the business. Events, improving the space, expanding the offering, paying for refrigeration, taking on staff and so forth. The corkage element does simplify things and pricing, especially when beers vary so much, but doesn't really scratch the surface of running a business effectively. So I think what Jules has done there is just taken the discussion just a little bit further in terms of saying, well, we're going to add a little bit if you want to drink it in. But this is the reason why, because we've got all of these other considerations to make.
It was actually a really interesting comment. I'll be honest, I still don't disagree with how it simplifies it by having two prices.
So next up from Johnny Beerboy at Johnny Beerboy, just listen to the corkage episode and I've got to say I'm 100% with Martin's viewpoint. I was hoping we might get a logical answer in the replies to the poll, but nothing came up that changed my opinion.
From Pete at Hops and Hoops, I know nothing about running a bar or beer shop, but I guess that there must be a higher margin on draft and small pack for the retailer. Is the higher price for drinking small pack a strategy to push the customer towards the higher margin product when drinking in? I have no answer to that because I have no knowledge about running a bar or a beer shop either.
No, me either. I can't add to that. Rich, I believe your stuff from the fridge in the Vic is one price, isn't it? There isn't a you don't. Can you take, because we actually questioned this last week, can you buy stuff from your fridge to take away?
Yes, you can, and it's the same price to take it away
it's
as it
right
is to drink it in. Yeah, we have a set price strategy across the board, and we stick by it. We don't muck around with it and do this. I mean, I've been thinking about this week, with this corkage thing, and offering a discount for takeaway beers, in my opinion, is encouraging customers to not be in the pub, because you could just
absolutely
go in there. Right, I'll have a couple of pints in there. Then I'll tell you what I'll do is, because I get it cheaper, I'll take a few cans out the fridge and I'll go home. Whereas the whole point of a pub is for people to sit there and drink and chat with their friends and chat with the staff and make new friends. So offering discounts in pubs is it's not nonsense to me. Sorry if that upsets certain people, but no, nonsense.
Doesn't upset me. It sounds like Rich agrees with me as well. I'm enjoying this at the moment, I have to admit.
I have a different view when it comes to bottle shops.
Okay.
Because bottle shops aren't technically designed to sit in and drink. So I'm quite happy if I'm going to sit in, let's say Two Brews, if I'm going to sit in Two Brews for a couple of hours, taking up his time, using his glassware, having to have him there, I'm quite happy to pay an extra 20p to cover the costs of what I'm spending. But I wouldn't expect him to discount me beer because I'm taking it away. I
was discussing this with Em in the week, and one of the questions that she raised was, firstly, is there a cost to the license to do things, and is there a difference in the cost if you are offering different services? So if you're licensed for on sales, is the cost of that license one price, but if you then choose to do off sales as well, is there an increase in the license, or is there no cost to the license at all?
Not that I'm aware of. There is a cost. Obviously, you have to pay to do the qualification and apply for the license and provide all of these checks that you have to have. So there is an underlying cost to get a license. I'm not 100% sure whether you actually then have to pay for a venue to have a license, and I believe it depends on the business. So as a pub, we have an on and off. So that's what we can do. Some places are purely an off license sales, but I don't think there's a difference in cost if there is any cost.
So if you didn't have the license for off sales as well, is that the situation whereby if somebody then buys something from the fridge, you have to open it and put it on the bar?
You wouldn't be able to to buy stuff to take away.
I think that's really interesting, actually. And I think this will, we've got a few more comments to get through, but I think, this will carry on. And, as much as I am definite about my views, it'd be great to carry on hearing other people's viewpoints and feelings about this.
Oh, I think we've got a few more weeks of this one.
From Greg Bullman, great show, guys. I hadn't heard of Hoplay's shop, but I've just looked online and there's a load of beers there, but we don't see up north. Seriously considering an order now. And I'm pretty sure Greg did place an order as well.
I think he did, because I think I tagged Hopley in and then they actually suggested there was a discount code he could use as well to get 10% off his order. So from Chicken Dipper at Chicken Dipper, I agree with Martin too, and I've used the Beer O'Clock code to get myself some delicious lager too. A productive Martin. So it's because all these people are talking about Martin. That's all I can see in the show notes now. Is your name everywhere? A productive morning so far. And then again, another one, Points to Brew at points_of_brew. Really enjoyed listening to what people had to say on the matter, especially Martin's strong views, shall we say. I do get where he's coming from, though, in a sense. I don't know if I'm happy with all these people agreeing so strongly with you, mate.
From James at James Moosh. Very interested in your views on the corkage discussion. I don't compare pub and home drinking, so it doesn't occur to me, but a takeout discount has encouraged me to buy it and drink at home. Because at that moment, I want to be in the pub, so I'm buying something to drink in. I can see the argument against, but it seems that your views are based on your experience of pubs charging very high prices for canned bottles drink in, which isn't something I've seen. And to be fair, James is right. My views are somewhat coloured by some of the experiences I've had in and around the London area.
Rhythm and Brews at Rhythm and Brews UK. Great episode. I must say that I'm enjoying the shortened lockdown episodes, as it means I can listen between conference calls. Was going to make the same joke about Steve disappearing before session 3 of the Fantasy Pub Crawl, but then he made it himself.
You did.
I'm nothing
Brilliant.
if but predictable. That's all I'm going to say to that one. And then another podcast, Men Behaving Badly at MBB Podcast. This is specifically from Tom. Loved the Budvar episode, guys. Amazing insight. Enjoying the current length of episodes, only because it's helping me catch up on episodes fairly swiftly. My podcast listening has dropped off since I've stopped commuting. I think this is a lot of people referring to our new snippets that we're putting out, that we like to refer to them as.
And, I think the phrase snippet was coined by the person who wrote the next comment, Mark N. Johnson. Great show that showcased my comment in the best way. Lots of discussion that I both agreed and disagreed with. Great to hear agreement and opposing views from everyone. Nice work. Thank you very much, Mark.
Yeah, means a lot. Thank you.
From Insignificant at Discombobulated. Really enjoying the short format. All the familiar bits, just smaller. Love listening, even if I do disagree with some of the opinions.
And then one final one from Matt Calaby at Calaby Matt. These are brilliant, guys. Keep me smiling on my morning walk. Keep it up, please. So some really nice feedback there this week. And now we've got just one single question this week as well.
Questions fill my head.
And this is from what seems to be the question machine, Miles Lambert, at Miles Lambert.
Isn't he just?
Who asked us, which 4 iconic beer bottles or cans would you have in your design for a beery Mount Rushmore? Now, for people that don't know what Mount Rushmore is, and I'm guessing there are some people that don't, it's the cliff face in America that's got 4 faces of United States presidents etched into it. So we did go back to Miles and we said, well, what are you talking about? We're talking about design, or are we talking about the beer itself, or are we talking about them being pivotal to our journey? And we kind of came up with a bit of a hybrid of all of those for our Mount Rushmores, didn't we?
Yeah, although I've definitely used the journey aspect.
I've gone a bit journey and a bit design. So should we let our guest go first with this one, who I believe did actually reply to Miles, but I missed the reply.
I've just gone for 4 classic beers, bearing in mind that the 4 presidents are 4 classic presidents. So I've gone for Timmy Taylor's Landlord, Old Peculiar, Fuller's ESB, and I've got written down here the original Tetley's.
So, Steve, what's your 4 beers.
Okay, so I've got I've got visual aids as well, which clearly isn't going to work as a on a podcast, but I've got them here to show it to you guys. Well, at least I've got 3 of my 4. So my first one would be this Sierra Nevada Pale Ale, because it's an absolute classic as far as I'm concerned. Also, bottle design wise, it's still quite unique in terms of its bottle design, so it stands out quite well. And obviously, one of the first beers that really started me on my craft beer journey back in the day. The next one, again, an iconic beer for me, Adnams Broadside. The Adnams bottles themselves are very iconic in their shape and style, and Broadside is a beer that I will go for literally every time that I see that one on a shelf. The bottled version, I believe, is far superior than the cask version, and I imagine I'm going to have a few people from Suffolk coming at me on that comment, but I will stand by my guns that I think the bottled Broadside is better. My third one is this absolute iconic beast. It's the original Unhuman Cannonball in a bottle with the etched design work on it. This is a beer that really defined the early stages of my craft beer journey. It was one of those that first time I'd ever had a 12% beer, and it blew my socks off. The old design, the old characters, still the one that stands out for me the most. So I would have that rather than the new canned version. And then the final one, which I don't have a bottle of, unfortunately, because they changed the design of the bottle. So this is where I've got a slight caveat. It would be Fuller's Vintage, but pre-2014 in the old bottles. Because, again, I think an absolute icon of a beer, and one that deserves to be up there with my 4 Mount Rushmore beers for me.
Can you pick a whole series of beers on Mount Rushmore?
That's not a whole series. It's any bottle pre-2014. You can go with the original if you want.
Yeah, but unless you're on my desert island, in which case that mountain face will have all of them.
Of course.
Actually, quite interesting because we've definitely got a duplicate beer there, Steve, and we didn't discuss this previously. And I almost had Magic Rock Unhuman Cannonball in there as well. Yeah, the only reason I didn't have it in there is because I was a bit of a late comer to Unhuman Cannonball. So, although once I found it, I loved it and the whole concept of the Cannonball Run, but it was quite late, a bit later in my beer journey. So, I've gone for, like I said, a bit of it's a journey versus design thing for me. Journey times design thing for me. So, Meantime IPA, the 750 milliliter bottle, 7.4%, cork and cage. First discovered this in Greenwich around about 2006, and I hadn't really seen beer presented like this previously. And I did buy a bottle from the place and really, really enjoyed it. And this is when, Greenwich were an independent brewery, and I think at the time, were the only independent brewery in London after Fuller's, because Young's are sold up by then. So circa 2010, part of my Belgian beer journey, Martin's IPA. Again, another cork and cage, 750 millilitres. First discovered this on a trip to Antwerp, 6.9%. It's beautiful, and I have the glass that goes with it as well. And then, let's face it, my 4 Mount Rushmore beers couldn't exclude this beer, Jaipur, but the old 500 milliliter bottle. This was 2011, first work beer tasting. I held it in the office. Jeff Evans chose all the beers. I discovered Jaipur, and I don't think I've ever looked back. And finally, and this is our duplicate beer, Steve, Fuller's Vintage Ale. Specifically for me, even though the bottle design is exactly the same for a number of bottles, but because it's one of my favourites, the 2006 iteration. First tried this, I think, in 2014. Loved it. And this is when you were able to buy it at sensible prices, both online, from the Fuller's shop, if you were there in person, or in a Fuller's pub before the prices went all crazy. So there's my 4. And I would quite happily have those overnight, to be honest.
Same here. I mean, they're 4 beers that I would drink again and again and again. Could thoroughly enjoy them every time.
Great question from Miles. No, don't know where he gets these from, to be honest.
No, but just keep the responses coming in on the your Mount Rushmore of beers. Use the hashtag Hopinions. Now, just before we give some final thoughts on our beers, just a reminder that we do have the Fantasy Pub Crawl coming up on Saturday 9th of May. There are still some spaces left across all 3 sessions. We are still, at the moment, just restricting people to 1 session each, but we will let you know probably on next week's show whether we're going to relax that a little bit and let you book across multiple sessions if there are still spaces available. So we'll put the links in the show notes again. If you want to get involved in that, make sure you sign up. You'll need the password, which is Scrabble, which will enable you to go in and book your spot. Also, if you want to be our next Rich as well, this is something that we're going to do. We're going to do this, try and do this every other show while we're still releasing weekly, is to have a guest drinker with us. Basically, you'll need some sort of headset and microphone combo. But if you want to be involved, send us a DM. And we'll chat to you about your availability and when you can possibly come on as well. So let's do one final round the table on thoughts on your beers. Starting with our guest drinker this week. Rich, I believe you've probably got an empty glass there. How have your Utopian beers been?
Yeah, great. Like I say, I've not had decent lagers for a long time. And this is just a joy to have 4 different styles of lager that are all, say, full of flavour, really easy to drink and thoroughly enjoyable. And yeah, I have got an empty glass, so time for a fill up soon.
Excellent. Martin, final thoughts on the porter from Anspach and Hobday?
Very, very accomplished version of the iconic London beer, the porter. Really well balanced. Very easy to drink at 6.7%. The smoky, chocolatey notes are really well balanced. Nothing's too overpowering. And I know you've got the IPA and the porter still to come, Steve, but I'd be quite happy if I had another couple of each to go. Excellent.
And my old Jock from Broughton, I've enjoyed this one. This is much more up my street. Full-bodied, thick caramel malty. A real delight to drink. So many thanks to both Broughton Owls and to Anspach and Hobday for sending those beers across. Rich, thank you for being our first guest drinker on one of our little snippets. Keep using the hashtag Opinions and keep getting involved in what we're doing. So until next week, cheers all.
Cheers guys.
Mount Rushmore rocks. Mount Rushmore rocks. Mount Rushmore.